When my mother-in-law asked everyone to gather around for the gift opening, my sister-in-law Kayla stood behind me with a smirk I'd learned to recognize over the years. The one she wore right before she said something designed to humiliate someone quietly enough that she could deny it later. She leaned toward the guests and said, loud enough for the whole room to hear, "I guess some people just didn't bother getting a gift." She was talking about my parents. What she didn't know was that their gift was sitting in a closet down the hall, hidden there an hour earlier by her own hands, and that I had spent the last 3 weeks sitting on a document that would end her claim to the family estate before dessert was even served. My name is Dana Reyes. I'm 33, 7 months pregnant with my first daughter, and for 6 years I've watched my husband's family treat my parents like an inconvenience they tolerated for my sake. My in-laws, the Whitfields, come from old family money, a modest fortune built by my husband's grandfather, a fortune Kayla has spent her entire adult life protecting like a dragon guarding treasure. My parents, Roberto and Carmen, immigrated here when I was 4 years old. My father drove a delivery truck for 28 years. My mother cleaned offices at night while raising 3 kids during the day. They never had much, but they never once made me feel like we lacked anything. When I got pregnant, they started saving from their already tight budget the moment we told them, determined to give their first grandchild something meaningful. Kayla never accepted me as part of the family. She made that clear from the engagement party, where she accidentally seated my parents at the table furthest from the head table, next to the kitchen doors. My husband, Ethan, always brushed it off as Kayla just being particular about seating charts. I let it go over and over, because I told myself family harmony mattered more than my pride. I had no idea Kayla's resentment toward my parents ran much deeper than simple snobbery, or that she'd been quietly maneuvering behind the scenes for over a year to make sure they never got what my husband's grandfather had actually intended for them. The baby shower was hosted at Ethan's parents' house, a sprawling colonial with a garden. Kayla insisted on decorating herself. 60 guests came, family, friends, co-workers, my side and his side blended together under string lights. My parents arrived early, carrying a beautifully wrapped gift, a handmade quilt my mother had spent 4 months sewing by hand, along with a savings bond they'd purchased for the baby's future. I watched my mother hand the gift to Kayla near the entrance, since Kayla had appointed herself the official gift table coordinator for the day. I didn't think anything of it at the time. An hour later, as guests settled onto the lawn chairs for the gift opening segment, I noticed the gift table only had about half the presents I remembered arriving. I scanned the wrapped boxes, searching for my mother's careful handwriting on the tag. It wasn't there. My mother, sitting a few rows back, gave me a small, embarrassed shrug, the same look she gets when she doesn't want to make a fuss. That's when Kayla, standing near the gift table with a clipboard, made her comment. "Well, we might as well get started. I guess some people just didn't bother getting a gift." A ripple of soft, awkward laughter moved through a few guests who didn't know any better. My mother's face went red. My father reached over and gently squeezed her hand under the table, the same quiet way he's comforted her through every slight this family has thrown at them over the years. I stood up, my hand instinctively resting on my belly, and walked straight to Ethan, pulling him aside near the garden shed. "Kayla just told 60 people my parents didn't bring a gift." I watched my mother hand it to her myself. Ethan sighed, already tired of the conversation before it started. "Dana, please, not today. Kayla probably just misplaced it in all the chaos. Don't make this into a thing. She humiliated my parents in front of everyone, Ethan. That's not misplacing something, that's cruelty." "You're being emotional," he said, the same phrase his family has used on me for 6 years whenever I ask for basic respect. "It's the hormones talking. Let's just enjoy the party." I walked back inside, past the kitchen, toward the hallway bathroom, and that's when I saw it, through the half-open closet door near the coat rack. My mother's quilt, still wrapped, shoved behind a stack of folding chairs. Kayla hadn't misplaced anything. She had hidden it there deliberately, sometime between accepting it at the door and the gift opening segment starting. I stood there for a moment, gift in hand, and something else came back to me, something I'd almost forgotten I was carrying. 3 weeks earlier, while helping Ethan's grandmother, Dorothy, organize old paperwork after her hip surgery, I found a folder labeled Trust Amendment tucked behind old tax documents. Inside was a notarized letter from Dorothy, written 8 months ago, stating she wanted a portion of the family trust redirected toward funding her future great-grandchildren's education, specifically naming my baby as the first beneficiary once born. Attached to it was a second document, one that made my stomach turn when I first read it, a request Kayla had submitted to the family attorney just 2 months later, attempting to have that same trust provision quietly removed. Citing a signature from Dorothy that Dorothy herself, confused and exhausted from recovery, had no real memory of providing. Dorothy had mentioned to me privately, weeks before I found the folder, that she felt foggy about paperwork Kayla had brought her to sign during her recovery, and that she trusted Kayla to explain things honestly. I hadn't known what to do with that information. Until that moment, standing in a hallway holding my mother's hidden quilt. I walked back into the garden, gift still in my arms, and set it gently on the table in front of everyone. "I found my parents' gift," I said, loud enough for the group to settle into an uneasy quiet. "It was in the coat closet." I looked directly at Kayla. "Funny, since you were the one collecting gifts at the door." Kayla's smile faltered. "I don't know how that got in there. Maybe one of the caterers moved it." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe it's easier to hide a gift than admit my parents have given more to this family, out of love, than some people have given out of obligation." A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Ethan's mother frowned, glancing between us. "Since we're already talking about generosity," I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart, "I think Grandma Dorothy would want everyone to know what she actually decided for this baby's future. Before someone tried to quietly change her mind while she was recovering from surgery and not entirely sure what she was signing." Kayla's face drained of color. "Dana, don't." I pulled the folded copy of the trust amendment from my bag, the one I'd been carrying for 3 weeks, unsure if I'd ever need it. Dorothy wrote, in her own words, that she wanted part of the family trust set aside for her great-grandchildren's education, starting with this baby. I looked at Dorothy, sitting quietly near the porch. "Grandma, is that what you remember deciding?" Dorothy, sharp despite her age, nodded slowly. "I remember writing that. I also remember Kayla bringing me papers to sign right after my surgery that I never fully understood." The garden went completely silent. Ethan's father turned toward Kayla, his expression hardening. Kayla opened her mouth, then closed it, no explanation ready. "I'm not here to ruin anyone's day," I said, setting the papers down. "I'm here because my parents drove 40 minutes with a gift they saved for months to buy, and someone hid it so she could call them cheap in front of 60 people. That's the kind of family I refuse to let my daughter grow up thinking is normal." I walked over to my parents, helped my mother stand, and asked if they wanted to help me open the rest of the gifts, together, the way it should have started. For months have passed since that shower, and my daughter, Sophia, was born healthy in early spring. The family attorney, once alerted by Dorothy herself, launched a formal review of the trust amendment. It confirmed Dorothy's original wishes were legitimate and that Kayla's attempted change relied on a signature obtained during a period Dorothy's own doctor later confirmed she was heavily medicated and not fit to make binding decisions. Kayla was formally removed as a trustee. She and her husband stopped attending most family gatherings after that, though I hear she still tells people the trust review was a misunderstanding. My parents, meanwhile, sit at the head of every table now, not because anyone forced the seating chart to change, but because Ethan finally started insisting on it himself. Sophia has a small education fund waiting for her, exactly as her great-grandmother intended, and a handmade quilt on her crib that my mother sewed with more love in it than any amount of money could buy. I learned that quiet generosity will always outlast loud cruelty, even if it takes hiding in a closet for a little while to prove it.